expression information security is tied to, some older technologies, antivirus, firewall, et cetera. And that has people believing that that's what you need to do to protect yourself. The reality is, it's changed. We need to start considering about data protection today, not information security. Data protection talks about different things. It talks about the value of your data, regardless of where it sits, inside your enterprise, outside your enterprise, employees, non-employees accessing that data, and what it's worth to you today. It also talks to the changed threat landscape, right? Everybody talks about information security. They think by virtue of the fact you get a firewall, you should be safe, or you have intrusion prevention, or you have antivirus. Those are old school. They're important, but they're old school. Data protection starts to walk into the value of the individual elements of your data within your enterprise and what can happen to you if they get lost or stolen. What's the CEO's role in all of this? There's a lot of different views on it, and even companies like us who live in this space need to grow up and evolve, and we need to be making this a standard part of our board meetings. Let's understand data protection, what we're doing, and do we believe we're doing enough? Let's discuss any possible breaches that may have taken place within the last period of time since we've reviewed it. The CEOs aren't doing that today. They are of the mind that that's being handled for them. You review your financial information, you review your technology information, you review your sales pipelines, but you're not reviewing those things that protect your brand and your shareholder value, probably the most aggressively. And today, that is your information security practices. Actually, let's take that expression away, your data protection practices. You gotta review it. You gotta make a boardroom. Let's talk a little bit about ignoring information security at an executive or a board level. Are you really ignoring it, and should you really, again, move away from information security and really start talking about your data protection and where it ranks in terms of the things that are important within your organization and why it's important? If you consider what impacts the value, your shareholder value, and your brand most dramatically, the data protection concept should be in your top 10. The loss of data, the loss of credit card information, the loss of patient medical record information, prescription data, social security numbers, all, if made public, or you could have a dramatic impact on your shareholder value and your corporate brand. You need to elevate data protection to one of those items that's discussed every single board meeting. And at your executive roundtables, you've got to discuss data protection. Why? Okay, let's talk about real numbers. Think about TJ Maxx. Think about what happened to them. 94 million records lost. At a very good day, yeah, they were all over the news in a very bad way, and does it impact their brand? Sure it does. Do customers think twice maybe about coming and visiting them again? Absolutely. There are credit card clearinghouses, a recent one here in Arizona that got whacked pretty hard. Guess what? They were penetrated. Data was stolen, forced them to change their name, and they lost one of their biggest contracts. These things happen to you every single day. Data loss, data theft is huge, and you should consider it as a top risk. As an executive, what do you care about? I mean, again, to get back to brand and shareholder value, those are things that get dramatically impacted if something hits the news. Outside of that, let's just assume something never hits the news, but it becomes, you are impacted. Data is stolen, data is lost. Forrester did a recent study that said the average record, the value of the average record stolen, particularly here in the United States, is somewhere between $90 per record and $305 per record. So if somebody's downloading, for example here, if we might have 80,000 customers in a database and somebody downloads that and sells it on out, and inside that you have my contract renewals, you have how much they spend on a per node basis, you have how much they've spent over the last several years. That's of value to a competitor. And people will try to sell that information someplace to, here or elsewhere in the world. So it's monetizing that. You have the impact of identity theft protection you may be forced to provide to your customers. You have the potential loss of intellectual property. For example, there's a great story about the $15 billion USB stick that was potentially stolen from Boeing. It's the full 787 project is on its, the key elements of it are on a USB stick on its way to China. You tell me what the value is. It's huge. The face of our criminals have changed, and what they're doing has changed as well. And what's changed that is value or money. They can get paid to do things. So the internet world form of theft is starting to mirror your brick and mortar world of theft. People don't want to be caught. They want to get in and get out with things of value and have a market afterwards in which to sell them. So John Pescatore from Gartner had a recent quote, which I thought was very good. He says, first of all, it's becoming very highly targeted. They're very well organized. They try to be stealthy. And the value or the impact and the cost of the damage of those attacks is anywhere between 10 and 50 times more damaging than that of the slammer style attacks that we saw in the virus Trojan world that impacted us just a few years ago. So the whole landscape has changed. There's money associated with it, and it is starting to mirror our traditional world of people walking into buildings and banks and taking things of value and trying desperately not to get caught. Just recently, there's another study that Gartner did that said nearly 70% of the security incidents that cost enterprises money were insider related. Now, insider doesn't mean that 70% of our employees are risky employees and consequently want to steal data from us. What 70% means is there's a combination of employee purposefully done damage as well as accidental damage. You know, there's an example in the UK recently and within their public health system where some CDs were mailed with a lot of health records on them. They were unencrypted. They were lost, never found. They don't know if they were stolen. They were on in the wrong hands. It was an accidental event, but the consequences of that were extreme and severe. It exposed, I don't know, 250 million records of God knows how many patients throughout the British Empire that are now potentially in the wrong hands. So it is an insider threat that says, you know what, people don't do things on purpose, but you need to provide them with the tools and the behaviors to make sure that the data that they're handling can't get into the wrong hands by accident or on purpose. I go along the lines personally that corporate data is corporate data. Corporate machines are corporate machines, and corporate activities should remain corporate activities. Should you lock down and control sites like LimeWire, et cetera, that allow people to take files from your system and put files back on your system? Should people be playing games and have the ability to download games? Should we be going to matchmaking sites on corporate time and on the corporate network? These are things we need to consider. And as executives, we need to sit down, spend a little time putting a framework around acceptable use within our environment. And yes, that varies by geography. You know, we might do a little bit more aggressively here than you might in Europe. But you need to sit down and understand what your position is and put a stake in the ground and then enforce it. I think there's an element for traditional technologies, absolutely. I mean, look, as CEOs, going back to one of your earlier questions, behaviors, how hard do you step on employees within your local enterprise, how tightly do you control what they use? There are theories that range from, I'm not going to stop my employees, is one theory. There is a percentage of a large population that will probably do wrong things. What I can do is, when they're going outside of our acceptable boundaries, pop up a screen that says, look, this isn't the right website, you really shouldn't go here, though I won't stop you. I might record it, but I won't stop you. Moving this type of file is not appropriate. I'm not going to stop you, but I'm going to record it. So that is kind of a gray approach, a customer warning approach. The other side is very draconian. These are the only things you're allowed to do. You can't go to any websites, you can't play any games, you can't download a thing, you can't move anything. So our world is understanding that balance and enforcing the right things. They have to set the high-level policy. First of all, they have to move it into something that's reviewed. They have to say it's one of my top 10 risks to brand or shareholder value. It's got to be stuff that's discussed at the board level, and it has to be discussed at executive management level. So the last nuance on a CEO role. Look, we're a coach, right? We've got a team. And if we want certain things to happen on a team, we focus on that in practice. It's the exact same thing a CEO has to deal with. We care about our sales pipelines, and guess what? We discuss those pretty regularly, and we make sure that we're doing the right things. We want to understand what our lead generation activities are. We work with our marketing teams pretty aggressively. And guess what? From time to time, we want to know what our customer-facing support statistics are as well. Information security / data protection is elevated itself into one of those items. You need to protect your data. It's need to be something that you have metrics based around, you focus on, you discuss, and you manage. You got to coach properly, raise its profile within your organization.